Good evening, good morning, good day, good night, or whatever the case may be, wherever you are. Welcome to Natalie and Omar discussion episode, node number 3. What are we going to speak about today? We are going to speak about interracial adoption. We're just going to give our opinion. I would really love to hear what you're thinking. Whether you agree or disagree, then we'd really love to hear your point. So, as usual, joined by Natalie Goris, and of course, I am Omar Clark. Natalie, what say you?
Well, Omar, I have to say, when you first proposed this as a topic, I came to it from a very naive point of view in that, love is love. And if someone is willing to give a stable environment and love that a child needs to thrive, then yeah, why not? It's really important. And I also acknowledge that, I don't have experience in this, but I have been a foster parent. I've been a stepmom. I've seen kids thrive on very simple things in terms of love, roof over their head, education, all of that sort of thing. But once we started diving deeper into this, it's a lot more complex, especially when you have interracial things. If you have a white parents adopting a black child, or from African American, or even Canada with Native Indians, or Australians with Aboriginal, First Nation people. So I think it's really complex, and that's, I think, the crux of what we need to discuss, because sometimes love isn't enough.
Okay, all right. So I agree with you. And I'm assuming it's safe to say then that on the principle of it, you have no objection. I don't have any objection to it, but as you said, we can skirt right past that, because really and truly the work is really beyond that. So you speak about certain complexities. Like what? What are some of the things that you are thinking? That maybe some of the complexities are. Yeah, what are some of the things that you may be thinking?
Well, I did, I started watching a lot of TED Talks, and both from the adoptee point of view and also from the parents' point of view. And so it gave me an interesting insight, because, I from my point of view, I've lived in the Middle East for the last 10 years. It was such a hodgepodge of people, and I brought my kids up in an environment where there was different religions, different, backgrounds. And so for me, as watching the kids, this wasn't a problem. But when you, in the context of adopting a child, taking a child in that is not from your culture, okay, you can impart knowledge on them, you can give them love, you can give them all of these wonderful things, but there's that cultural aspect that you don't have access to, and that has to be acknowledged. And there was actually a great, what's Will Smith's wife's name? She's doing this thing called a table discussion.
Really? You're listening to hip hop? Alicia Keys.
No, his wife, Jada Smith, she was doing an interview with an African American girl.
Oh, Will Smith. I thought you said Swiss Beats. I'm like, oh, okay. No, yeah, Will Smith, Jada Pinkett.
Isn't that something you eat?
No.
Sorry. I'll ask my kids about them. Oh, no.
All right, go ahead.
So they interviewed this beautiful young lady who had been adopted by white parents, but she was African American, and she grew up in a small country town in America, and it was predominantly white, and how she felt that she didn't fit into white culture 100%, but she also didn't fit into black culture later on. And this was echoed by a beautiful TED talk by a lady called Susan Devin Harness, and she was an American Indian, Native American Indian, and she was adopted by white parents. And it wasn't 2 years later she went to college and joined up with the, you know, Native American Indian group, and they scorned her because, you know, they looked at her as like being too white. And so she had this feeling of not belonging in each of the cultures. And I think that's something that is overlooked, the pull to understand where you come from, who you are as a person.
All right.
I think that's...
Okay, thanks. So I'll share with you what my thoughts are on the matter and some of the things that I thought about. So going beyond the agreement in principle in terms of no problem with the act itself. You spoke about certain things and I thought about it. I don't have the answers really, so it's just my thought. So you spoke about things like culture, but we speak about it in terms of race. But when I started to think about it some more, I said, well, really and truly, does your race make your culture? Or is it your culture is based on your environment? You see? So I think if we look at it just strictly from you want the child to maintain a certain culture and you tie that with race, I believe that is incorrect, you know, because the culture for someone in Canada or Sweden is probably different from someone, you know, in the States or Argentina, you know what I mean? Which would mean that it's not necessarily strictly a function of the color of the skin. So I think when we are worried about, you know, how are we going to say maintain or introduce or the culture of the child, that I don't think it's specific to the color of your skin. That's something totally
No, it wasn't. It's not.
Yeah, well, understood. So that's one of the questions, like, you know, I was going through my head and so forth. The other thing I was thinking is this, and I use a practical example. So you're a parent, and you also have adopted kids. So I have two boys, and I asked myself the question, okay, Omar, so let us say, you know, you adopt a child of another race, doesn't matter, you know, but it's just a different race. How would you deal with that situation, you know? And I sat and I thought about it. And apart from the usual, you know, take your well-being and all of that stuff, I asked myself the question, what virtue would I like my two boys to have? Okay, would it be different from taking the virtue that I like them to have and putting it on another child? Does it matter? So again, for me, again, I dug further and I said, well, okay, hang on a second. If I want the best for my child, certain things like tolerance and, you know, appreciation for diversity and all these things that you'd like them to have, then it really doesn't matter. It really and truly doesn't matter. So is it then that if you have an issue with, you know, raising a child of a different race, is it then that you are a quote unquote parent that is not necessarily giving you a maximum full stop, because you really and truly are not even giving that to your existing kids, because what is required across the board, are you challenging yourself to make your child, who is of the same race as you, the best that they can be? You understand? You know, know that you have another child that is not of your race, now you're thinking even more. Then hang on, if you're now thinking more because you have a child of a different race, then how is it that is it that you are not giving that maximum thought to your existing child? So again, it's not, I didn't have an answer, but these are just some of the questions that I raised. So again, thinking some more, I said, hang on. So is it then you're a poor parent regardless of whether it is your child or somebody else's, because the principles to raising a good child is irrelevant of the skin color. You understand? That's where I was in my thought. That being said, though, you know, I broached the question to a couple persons of, you know, different races, different background and all of that. And there are some practical things I believe that definitely have to understand. And I didn't think about it, maybe because I'm a guy, but here actually is one. And
yeah,
here,
this comes up a lot when I was doing that thing. Yeah, yeah.
You know, so what was said to me is that, Omar, if you have if someone adopts a Caucasian child, you know, apart from, you know, the love and upbringing and so forth that you like to bring, there are certain practical things that you have to understand. Here, they have to wash their hair every day because apparently oil builds up every day, you know. So you'll find that Caucasian wash their hair every day. It is something that, you know, I've generally observed. I had no idea why. I kid you not. In the same way, you know, when it comes on to persons of color, things like you have to make sure that, you know, you supply them with what is required to keep their, you know, their skin moist and so forth and so on. But that led me to another question, and it is with identity. So persons may say, you want the child to be in identity. Whose identity? Is it your identity? So my question, the next question I ask myself is this. Why would I want any of my kids to have my identity? My identity is not, has nothing to do with our skin color. You understand? The skin color is not your identity. So for persons who probably think that, no, you want to have your child to have their identity, that has nothing to do with you. That's where I got in my thought. It has nothing to do with me. My job is to help them to realize what identities they want, because that identity is not necessarily what is on the outside. You know what I mean? It's what's there. So that's how far I got in my thought. I don't know, what do you have to say?
No, this is, you know, in terms of raising my two boys, you know, so being in the Middle East, religion is a very big thing, you know, and I haven't raised my children in any religion. You know, if I've taken them to India, I show them, you know, the different Hindu temples, or, you know, they spent the first 10 years of their lives in a Muslim country, and so they understand Islam. You know, neither of, so, but I would teach them about everything. And they would say, a lot of people would come to them and ask them, stick with me with this, is like, you know, what religion are you? Because it was a big thing in the Middle East to know what your religion is. And so I would say to them, you have to tell them, my mum is raising, like, showing me all sorts of different religions and allowing me to choose. So when they get older, who am I to impose my religion on my children? Who am I to enforce my identity? I want them to be who they are. So when you go back to values, even in terms of who they raise, I mean, I don't know, you know, what their sexual preference will be in the future. I don't know who they're going to love. So what I say to them, and I do this from a point of freedom, is like, I don't care who you love, you know, what nationality, whatever, as long as you bring me home grandbabies. So that gives them the freedom then to be.
You're going to have to take care of them. Make sure you're available for those babysitting duties, yes?
No, but it's to give them the freedom to be who they are as people. So I agree with what you're saying. You know, it's got nothing to do with color, and going in the future, if I choose to be with another in another relationship while my kids are still young and living in the house with me, then what I'm concerned of as a mother would be like, what are the values of that man? What are the values of who, you know, what is he going to be? He's going to play a part of the role in who my kids are, or be with my kids. So you're looking at the values, which is exactly what you said. The color of his skin is totally irrelevant if they're they're not bringing good values and love into the house.
Yeah, there are lazy parents of all race, religion, nationalities. That's a fact, as well as there are good persons wherever and all of that. Now, another thing, again, thinking about this whole business, is what does it mean for your friends? Like, okay, let's be practical. So for whatever reason, you have adopted someone that is non-Caucasian. What would that mean for some of your friends? Probably, what adjustments, if any, you'd have to make, whether it's how you normally, if any at all, or if nothing applies to you personally. I'm assuming that.
From my side, no. I mean, listen,
Not
when I introduced my stepson into to Australia, okay, there's not a color difference, but he couldn't speak English.
Caucasian?
He's Caucasian, but when he first came to Australia, he could speak no English, none whatsoever, and my family just embraced him. They couldn't even speak to him, but they didn't care. They didn't care at all.
But that's different, though. I mean, another language,
it's
because
different.
Because most people, this is the reality. It's an easier acceptance for not speaking the language, but similar skin color, depending on the persons and so forth and so on. Now, there's a specific reason why I asked that question, and I'll share this story. A friend of mine, probably about 2 months ago, she's Caucasian. She called me up one day and she asked me, she said, Omar, I want to ask you something. I mean, we have known each other for a while and so forth and so on, but I want to ask you something. And she wanted to have a conversation with me about race. And, where they're having a very, very frank discussion. And what she said at the end of it was, there are a lot of my friends that are prejudiced or racist or whatever the case is. She said that at the time, you didn't really notice it, just kind of oblivious to it. That's just the reality. But when you look into yourself, you realize that, hang on, there are some persons that, you really don't fit. Just like how I can say that you probably know some persons that if I date a Caucasian woman, they probably, skin up the face, or that happens. So that's why I'm asking that very practical question. So bring somebody that is not of your race as a child, or I bring somebody, and I'll certainly give my point if it were me, but what are the practical changes, if any, that you imagine it may not have to happen affect you personally, but just based on your wide travels and understanding of people. And of course, Australia, as it has had its share of, issues. I just want to know, hypothetically.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hypothetically speaking, from my personal view and knowing who my family are as people, I don't ever see that would be a problem. That doesn't mean the broader community, it might not, what was that saying that Nisha said the other day, that cockeyed view that, if they saw me and I had, two black children as well as my own children, or, they might get looks, they might get that cockeyed look, but at the end of the day, it's how the two people, how you choose to acknowledge it. And I think there's what I was doing is reading this article on the Times thing, is one of the things is a myth that you can't talk about it. I think you have to be honest and open with your children, with, people around you, have that conversation. But at the end of the day, from my point of view, no, I don't think. And do you know what, to tell you the truth? If there was someone that had a problem, like really had a problem, then that's not someone that I want in my life anyway.
Yeah. So
It's not. I mean, so I'm acknowledging that there could be potential thing, but judging from my family and who they are as people, I would not see a problem. And even on my extended things, that doesn't mean to say that on a community level there might be. You know, we had that same discussion with age difference. You know, it's up to the people within the relationship to deal and be committed to not worrying about what the rest of the community says.
Right. So the thing is, yeah, obviously it's going to be a lot of work. I mean, there's no two ways about that. And whosoever get themselves in that situation are going to have to be prepared to shed a lot of a lot of dead weight. But here's the thing, and the more I think about this whole issue, the more I'm thinking that it does not matter. And this is specifically why I say that, because you have persons now, full Caucasian or full, African American or full, Negro, whatever it is, but they're of a particular race. But they are outspoken against inequality and injustice. You understand? So their entire family is it's homogeneous, one particular race, right? But they are vocal about injustice. So they do come under pressure. They do come under pressure from persons of their own race. So you see it all the time, like what's happening now. You have, say, Caucasian families that are in solidarity with standing up for racial inequality, and they come under pressure from other Caucasian people. You have, India. Well, it's really in the Indian culture, depending on where you fall and all of that. They have their own issues. But the thing is, once you stand up for what is right, whether it is your own child or whether it is the fact that all your family is of the same particular race, that you're going to come under it. So that is why I say that the more I think about it, there is no issue. Because once you decide that you are going to stand up for something that is right, you are going to come under pressure, regardless whether or not you have a child that is of your race or of somebody's race. You are going to feel it, and it is just something that you have to be prepared to do. So I think that when we talk about having a child of another race and all of that, it is no more or less of the qualities that you would need, no more or less of the qualities that you would need to bring up your own damn child, to get that child to be the best child that they can very well be. There's absolutely, and if you have a problem because it's a child of another race, you have a problem with your own child because you are not putting in that work to make that child the best it can be, because it does not require in principle, in knowledge and training, anything different. No, obviously there's a practical aspect of it, apart from the hair and all of that and so forth. It's because if we say, like, no, what's happening in the world? All right, you're going to speak about actions when you when you're stopped by a police. How what's the best way to go about it? Really and truly, it will be good regardless of which race you are, that you know those things. You're going to now speak about awareness of what's going on globally. Really and truly, even if your entire family is of Negro race, even if your entire family is of Asian race or Indian race or Caucasian race, it is something that you need to educate your child with in terms of racial equality and we're all the same, etc. These are lessons. So again, I struggle to find what's the difference, honestly. Unless
I agree with you. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, keep going. Finish what you're saying.
Okay. Unless there are some deep nefarious means. That is the only difference I see. if I'm going to raise my child that they are superior at the expense of another race, then it becomes a problem. And that does not matter which race it is. Because there's nothing wrong in instilling superiority in terms of the self. You understand? You know, in terms of me as an individual, my being, I am not weak, I am superior. That has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the next man, nothing at all. This is me as an individual realizing that I am powerful, I am strong, I am positive energy all the time. I am a superior being. You know, there's a difference between that and then saying, I am a superior being to you. That is where the bullshit comes in. And I think that is where, you know, I believe there'll be a problem if you say, hang on, someone of one race or a family of race should not raise a child of another race. Because obviously, if that is your ideology, then that would make no sense to put yourself in that situation. But if your ideology is not any of that, then what's the problem?
No.
That's my thought.
Listen, I think if people, no, I agree with everything that you're saying. That, you know, if you're coming from a place of love, but I think you also have to acknowledge that there is stuff going on in the world, that this does exist. You know, there's this latent racism that still exists today in the planet. And I think you know, if you're willing to have the hard conversations, acknowledge it. You know, I remember someone saying to me, I think said, you know, I don't see color, but this pisses me off because it's like, but why? You know, if you're black, I'm white, we have a color difference. You know, Oprah did a show saying that genetically speaking, we are 1% different, and that's the color of our skin. And so you know, you look at flowers. Flowers is all of God's creation, and they're all different colors, but they're flowers. So this, but I think, so from that perspective, you have to acknowledge it, but rejoice in it. To say that it doesn't exist is to say that one is better than the other, and that's not true. It's bullshit. You know, you see color, and to honor color and the differences. It's the same. You know, in a like just globally now. You know, we're tending towards this globalization where it's a homogenous society. We're all wearing the same jeans, and people are losing their cultural identity and their dress. Like, this is bullshit. This is the beauty of our world, the differences, and needs to be celebrated. But as an adoptive family, you have to acknowledge there are things that will be faced by, you know, children from a different race that are not yours. But as a person committed to raising children and giving them love and strength, and no, there is no difference. There is no difference. You know, you are trying to instill the same values in your boys that I am trying to instill in my boys. I mean, so how is it different? There's not. But you have to acknowledge that there might be problems that they will have that, say, the others don't. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, like I said, you cannot get away from the particular aspect of thing. But if you're truly going for the gold standard, then it should be instilled those same principles, that you're thinking of, whatever you're thinking of, because you now have a child of a different race as part of the family. Really and truly, you should be thinking of that with your existing kids. You understand? Whatever it is, unless your intention and your ideology, you know, is separation based on skin color. Just the other thing that I want to, you know, just touch on. I just wrote it down as we were speaking, is color versus culture. And I mean, we touched on it at the beginning as well, and I think for anybody that's watching or listening or whatever the case is you can have multiple cultures with the same skin color, you know?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
the identity portion of it as well. Again, if you say you need a you know, a Jamaican child to be raised by a Jamaican parent for identity purpose. Um, it, it, it doesn't have to be the case. Now, that being said, you have to do your work, do your research. For example, if say I adopt, you know, a Caucasian child, and I know that originally they are from Italy, for argument's sake. Remember, that child is coming. The child is not going. In other words, the child is going to grow up. You know what I mean? Eventually, they're going to start asking questions. So it makes no sense to shy away from it or run away from it or anything like that. You know, I think it would be good, you know, knowing that this child is actually from Italy, is to introduce as much as you can some aspects of their culture. It does not take anything from you
Absolutely.
as the adoptive parent.
Yeah.
It can be quite fun.
Yeah.
Because listen, who does not like wine and cheese? You know,
Well,
but
that's
honestly,
French.
the thing about, so the thing is, it takes nothing from you. I believe. So you
No.
have to be practical,
Yeah.
and you're gonna have to do some work for sure. You understand? And because eventually that child is gonna grow up and start to ask some questions, you know. So where am I from? Where am I? You know, and they're gonna go seek and, you know, preempt that. You don't know anybody from Italy? Find somebody from Italy. You know what I mean? Find things about the country that you because that's really so. So you adopt a child from Kenya, you know, and and as the child gets older, introduce the child to some aspects of their culture where they're from. It does not affect how you have treated that child as their adoptive parents growing up, because that child is gonna get curious. You understand? You know, you have to educate that
Yeah.
child, familiarize the child, make that child aware, let that child feel loved in your family, obviously, but do not neglect, you know, the genealogy, if you will, you know, or where or the culture
Yeah.
in which the child, you know, was conceived or was born. You understand? So that's just what I wanted to say where that is concerned. Yeah, that's it.
Mm.
And
I think it's like everything in life. I think, you know, there's core values. Remember when we were talking about yoga and before, and we were talking about, you know, this ever eternal presence, that who you are really is beyond culture, beyond what our family have said, beyond what society says, you know. And I think if you can acknowledge that in another person, then everything else just falls aside. It's bullshit. I mean, we have to deal with the realities of the societies that might not have our own values. But we as parents, regardless of race or whatever, are there to bring up this next generation of kids that this stuff means nothing to them. You know, absolutely nothing to them. And that's the way our world should be working towards, is that this stuff is just, love is love, values, good, strong values. I mean, this might sound a bit airy-fairy and not practical, but this is what we should be working towards. And in fact, some of these, you know, exposing people to, I mean, I come from, you know, the last 20 years, I have been living overseas. I have people, friends that I love dearly from all sorts of backgrounds. And it, honestly, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. In this context, I think there's some realities that you have to face, but as long as you can be open, honest, have the conversation, support the child, you know, where possible, and be committed within a family, then I don't think it matters.
all right.
I know this is not a race thing. I have had foster children. I have my stepson. I mean, I love them as much as I love my boys. You know, okay, there were some issues that I didn't have to deal with. That's it. But
Well, no worries.
you know, you can still love them like this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, you know, just wrap up. The final thing that I'll say is the savior stuff. First of all, before I go there, anybody that is watching it that has either interracial, you know, family or adopted interracial, you know, kids, listen, mad respect. yeah, I just have a lot of respect for persons like that. Simply because there is a lot of work to be done, and it's may seem like a small situation per se, but that's how you change. You know. Yes, the nerdy side of me in geometric progression, it changes one, then you affect a couple more, then they affect a couple more, and so forth and so on. But anyway, um, there can be, especially for Caucasians that adopt a child that is non-Caucasian, there can be like a savior mentality, if you will. You know, that is something that needs to definitely never ever be portrayed, or let the child feel as if they have been being saved by you know um, just saved by a Caucasian or something like that. That is just the way of society. You see these pictures all the time, right? You see some starving child in Africa, and you know the images as they are, and so it really,
Yeah.
yeah, it really gives an impression that you're a great savior and all of that. And for those of us who are in that situation, just ensure that you don't ever portray that until the child that is in your care. You understand? Like I said, there are good parents regardless, of skin color or anything like that. And that's just the last thing that I'd like to say. Um, I really like it. So really love to hear from anybody that has different views, are going through the situation right now. And please, comment, below. Would really appreciate that. This is easily, you could easily speak for about like 3, 4, 5 hours on this topic for sure. But yeah,
It'd actually be really interesting to hear from people who have had that experience. So neither of us have, but it's a topic that we are interested in, and opening up the conversation. But there is a lot of research out there. There is a lot of TED Talks about people from both, like the kids who have been adopted, the parents who have been adopted, and their struggles. So this is, like neither of us coming to it with an idea that we have expert knowledge. It's just creating a discussion about it. So actually, it'd be really, really wonderful to hear from people who have been through the experience and who have, or even have completely different ideas to what we did. So this to open up the discussion, that would be wonderful to hear from people.
Yeah, here's a question for anybody.
Okay.
Obviously I've heard our opinion, but so your son or daughter decides that they're gonna date someone of a different race. What are you gonna do? Well, at the end of the day, you may be able to do nothing. That's the reality. But these are things that you have to think about. When that grandchild is born, what are you gonna do? These are just some things. So even if you don't, life is kind of interesting. So even if you don't adopt one may very well find itself in your family. You know what I mean? And that is the reality of the situation. What are you going to do? You understand? What are you going to do?
Can I interrupt you there?
Oh, yeah.
One of my closest friends is from Uganda. She's like a soul sister. Her and I talk regularly, and so we were in the Middle East together. And her son, this is what I'm saying, this next generation. Her son, my son, they're best friends. She has a daughter. I have a son the same age, and oh my God, we're always conspiring about, how do we get these kids together and be grandparents together, and it's in terms of what I'm trying to instill in my boys. I don't, as long as you bring me home grandbabies, doesn't really matter who you love. As long as they are loved, you're loved, you create this beautiful family. I mean, in theory, nothing else should really matter.
All right, cool. So that's it. What have we spoken about today? We just gave our opinion on interracial adoption. I mean, obviously, both of us think that there's no issue in principle. However, we both agree that there's a lot of work to be done. But we're also challenging you guys that you may be a poor parent if you know, you're not even instilling the values that you would think about if you're going to have a child that is of a different race, and you aren't putting those values into your child. You know, that's that's a challenge, if you will. If you don't agree, that's okay. You know, I'd really love to hear that comment. But honestly, in my thinking and what we have said, definitely that's where we are on it. That you should really strive for the A level for your kids, whether or not they are of, you know, if you start to alter your thought in terms of the upbringing because it's of a different race, then chances are the existing child, you're omitting certain knowledge and certain awareness that they need in this world today and in the future. So, you know, we spoke about, you know, skin color versus culture, you know. We spoke about identity, that if you feel that you have to be of the same skin color as your child, so for them to for them to know their identity, then, you know, again, we're saying that that makes no sense, because your identity goes far beyond just what you see here. You understand? At the end of the day, you know, your identity should be beyond this, and we are far away from it, but you have to start aiming for that. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. If you don't aim for it, how the hell you expect to get there? You know what I mean? So we spoke about it. We spoke about the savior mentality as well. You know, the images that we see a lot, where, you know, you have a Caucasian parent and there's a non-Caucasian child and so forth. And so for anybody that may be in that situation, just make sure, you know, that just double check that at no point in time are you giving off that I'm here to save you type thing. You understand? We spoke as well about superiority, where there's nothing wrong with identifying and believing and preaching superiority within yourself, within your internal being, your energy, being the best that you can be. And my superiority, you know, and Natalie's superiority does not come at the expense, you know, of somebody else's. You understand? If it comes at the expense of somebody else, then that is a whole different ball game that you're going into. You understand? What were you going to say?
That word superiority, Omar, you know, I think each person in this lifetime should be striving to be the best person that they are, and you should be instilling that in your children too, you know, you want them to achieve the best that they can and be happy. But if you start, you know, in yogic practices and even most religions, you know, you talk about the interconnectedness of everyone. If that's done at even from that being like, hey, I'm a better person, no, you can't come from that level. You might have got a higher education, you might have got more successful in your job, but that doesn't mean you're superior to the person that's, you know, pulling beers at the local pub. You know, we're all connected. We are all connected. And to use that, I think, is incorrect. Yeah. To
use superiority within yourself?
Yeah, in any sense of the word. You know, the minute you forget that, the minute you forget that we're all connected.
And there's a reason I specifically chose that word, but I want to hear what you have to say. What would you say?
No, you just heard it.
Nah, because the thing is, no, because you said why it should not be said. So I'm asking you what should be said. How would you describe it?
No, I think, listen, I think every person's obligation in this world is to become the best that we can. And maybe someone's best is and if they're happy and whole and complete people, and they're pulling beers down at the local pub and they're happy, that's good. You know, if I've gone off and got 3 masters and I'm, you know, working in academia, that doesn't make me superior to that person. It means that I've succeeded in this different particular life. But superiority over any person.
But that's not what I said, though. That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
That's what you were saying?
No.
What were you saying then?
No. What? No. That's why I'm
maybe
actually
I misunderstood you.
No, honestly, that's what I was trying to understand what you're saying. That's what I said. I said there's nothing wrong with superiority within yourself. So you believe within yourself.
Within yourself, competing and making the, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so within yourself, I said my superiority is not at the expense of yours or anybody else's, but I believe that as a being, I'm a superior being, meaning that I am a quote unquote king within my own right, or you're a queen within your own right. So when I step like royalty. I'm a superior being, but it does not mean that I'm superior to you or you're superior to me. The moment I start to think that my my superiority is as a result of your inferiority, then there's a problem. That's what I said.
Yeah. That's good. I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't hear, like, yeah, I think it's everyone's responsibility to become the best person that they can. This is, you know, yeah, that's it. So that's good. Okay, so we've clarified it. Good.
Yeah, 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 no worries, man. But yeah, subtle difference, but very important difference. Make sense?
Very important, very important.
All right, then cool, yeah, fantastic. So another good conversation. And again, guys, share your comments, share your views, share your opinion. Would really, and if anybody has anything different, please feel free to comment. We'll definitely reach out back to you. Would really love to hear what you guys have to say. Okay. All right, cool. Cheers. Thanks again, Natalie. A pleasure as usual. You know, sorry for ending this conversation.
Pleasure as always.
Minutes. You know. So
no, but it's good to qualify these things and get. Yeah. So there's a delay. I'm on a hotspot, so my internet is really bad. So yeah, so I'm in the middle of a construction zone, and I have this as my hotspot, and the internet keeps coming in and out. Sometimes.
Okay, I got you. All right then, cool. Yeah, no worries, man. All right, cheers.
Okay, have a great evening. Bye. Bye.